Hello, Melissa Crook here. We're back with another panel on the Together We F.E.E.L show. So glad to have you with us. Today, we are talking about the importance and the impact of our relationships with our girlfriends, with our sisters, and the role that plays in our health. And this has come up for me several times over the years. The first time it came up was in season 1 with our guest, Megan Van Stone. And she talked about how important those relationships were, even as she became a partner and got married and had children, how important it was to keep those core relationships intact, purposeful, meaningful, and how well they were able to support each other through all of life's seasons. Because sometimes when we get busy, she has her own businesses. She's a very busy woman doing all the different things. And many times those relationships with our girlfriends and even our sisters can be the first ones we let slide. And she talked about how important it was for her that not happen. And it's come up several times. Another time that I remember, and these are just the times that come to the top of mind, like it's come up repeatedly. But another one I think about is my episode with Paula Chirinos in a couple of years ago. She kicked off, I think, season 4 for us. No, I'm forgetting. It was January 2023, I want to say, maybe 2024. It's all blurring together now. I'm showing my age and time. Anyway, but she talked about her relationships and who she surrounded herself with and the impact that had on her health, on who she gave her energy and time to, versus she kind of did a cleaning out of the toxic ones versus the healthy, supportive ones. And I know that we all have an opinions and thoughts about that today. So as this continued to come up over time, I'm like, this is a good panel topic. And I think it's a really important one to jump into, because I think we've all gone through seasons in our lives where those relationships have been more or less prevalent in our lives for various reasons. And understanding and seeing the impact of when they're present versus when they're not, having healthy ones versus toxic ones. And sometimes we have to do a little bit of cleanup for our own self-preservation, and that can be hard. But these relationships are a staple, and they play a huge role in our lives. I have 3 daughters. They are very close to each other. It's a very important dynamic in their lives. They've also worked very hard to make sure those relationships are what they are. And they've been very intentional about it. So I think it's that thing too of realizing that, of course, there's some people you just click with and it's just natural and it doesn't feel like you have to work on it. But over time, any relationship that sustains over time, whether you move, you go through different seasons, it takes an intentionality and it takes some looking at and it's like, does this still fit? Is this still healthy? Or is this also a season that's gone by and it was a great, wonderful addition and story and part of my life? And it's also okay to release those when they don't fit anymore. That doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong or anybody is bad. And so there's a nuance to that too. But so there's a lot to cover in this. But I know for me, how important these relationships have been for me throughout my life, from the time growing up where I had some girlfriends who they and their families were my lifeline when I was in a very emotionally toxic environment growing up. They were a lifeline that something different was possible. And then just even as going through, I have one of my closest best friends were like sisters. Her family became like family to me. Her parents are grandparents to my children. And then there's other ones that I've lived all over the country that I've met along the way that have been a wonderful blessing. Some I keep in really close contact with, and some I don't, but it doesn't change the fact that they were important to me when I was there in that place, in that season, and their impact left a lasting impact on me as well. So it's a very, I think it's just an important topic for us to address. I also have an entire talking point that talks about women supporting themselves and other women. in living unapologetically. And I firmly believe it's that listening to each other's stories and showing up to support each other in the ways that we need to be supported so we can change the narratives that we want to change in the world to make this a safe, healthy place for girls and women to inhabit. We do that as a collective. We do that together. We do that by listening to each other's stories and being curious on how we can support each other and not just assuming that everyone's lived experience is my lived experience. So I have a lot of strong feelings about this topic today and why it's important for us to talk about it. I'm going to give each of our beautiful guests that are here with me today, wise, smart, so thankful for them. Dana and Dr. Fandy's been with me for the longest. Dana, after that, Rosa Maria, I've just met recently. I'm excited. So this is the first time that she's been on our platform. She's going to be a podcast guest later. You've heard from Fanny and Dana in multiple layers, but they're going to bring a different tone to this conversation today. It's a little bit different than other things they've discussed. So I'm excited to hear from them how this has impacted them and how it's been important to them. But we're going to start with Dana. Just give a little background on yourself for anybody that's new today and why you wanted to be part of this conversation. And then we'll have Dr. Fanny and Rosa Maria. We'll have you all do the same thing.
Wonderful.
All right, Dana, you're
Thank you. I'm Dana S. Diaz. I am an author of a memoir trilogy about my experiences with lifelong abuse, specifically narcissistic abuse. But for those who don't understand that, that includes everything from physical abuse, the emotional, financial, legal, et cetera, et cetera. I speak now empowering women and giving them permission that they don't give themselves to break free from role expectations. So I wanted to be here because I think this idea of sisters and friendships, it means something to me. Actually, the sister idea is something that is actually an underlying theme in all three of my books, because having been the first child to my mother and my biological father, I was an unwanted teenage pregnancy. So I was always kind of the odd man out. I have siblings that each parent had with their respective spouses that they ended up with. But I always felt like I was on the outside, and I always had this wish to have a big sister because I kind of missed out on the mom department. She was neglectful, and very clearly, even to this day, we have no contact. She chooses not to have a relationship. So I always wanted that big sister, that person that I could go to when I had a boy problem or what to wear to this, and, just with life, and when I was pregnant with my son, I fortunately had my ex-husband's older sister to, have that relationship with. But throughout life, I have always found that I just wanted that big sister, but I had trouble connecting with people because of my initial development with having that detached relationship from parents and not having the siblings when I was younger to grow up with, and also being treated from the siblings that I had when they came along. I was absolutely treated like I was from outer space, and they were wanted and welcomed, and I was just over there because I was an obligation. So it's an important topic, and I agree with everything you just said in the introduction, by the way. So it's all very relevant. I don't even know where to start on that.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, more on that to come, but thank you so much. All right, Dr. Fanny, why give people a background if they're new here, and also why this topic is important for you.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Fanny Le Boulanger. I always say, if you want to laugh, that literally means the baker. I am a sassy French physician, or a French Swiss knife, depending on how you want to call it, because I'm working in gynecology daily. I am also a self-love and pleasure coach, or whatever, still managing the title, having no idea how to call myself. I'm writing a book, and I'm also the host of an amazing podcast, which is the love of my life. It's called Your Sexified Life, about empowering women to feel alive again and step out of autopilot and building a life that feels enlivening and it feels worth living. And what's really important for me about this topic is, especially because I work with women, there is so much that we still need to do. It's getting better, but there is so much that we still need to do. And sometimes the best way to get the change to start is when you hear from your close relatives. And hearing and seeing your relatives change, hearing new things that they're saying, seeing their new behaviors. It helps start conversations. It helps us reflect on how we behave, what we do, and allowing all of that. Also, because there's so much more there about the sister wound, about how we've been turned against each other in this patriarchal bullshit that we're living in and things like that. There's so much wisdom in this topic. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Rosa Maria Mancini, welcome to our platform here today. So glad to have you with us. Tell our listeners a little about yourself and why you wanted to be part of this conversation.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm Rosa Maria Mancini. I am a writer, communications professional, professor, and I'm based in Bonn, Germany. So I'm an expat from the United States. I used to live in New York and later Rome, and now I'm in Germany. So I recently wrote a memoir, SOS Podcast, which was basically the culmination of my PhD studies in creative writing. So I published that. And in my memoir, I talk a lot about my podcast listening and how it helped me get through difficult moments in my life, which was in essence living overseas. But I was really interested in the topic of this panel because of the idea of sisters, because I have an older sister and we do have a really, really special bond. In some ways, I mean, it was interesting also because my husband says that my relationship with my sister sort of prevents me from actually finding other girlfriends because I compare them all to her. So I was like, I have to be on this because I'm so interested and I want to talk about that. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation. Yeah.
So many things come to mind when I hear that. The first thing, this is kind of a funny example, but kind of connected to that, because when you are so close with your sisters, you're kind of like, I got what I need. I'm good. And you want other, if other relationships don't show up that way, it's like, why do I need to expend the energy? And so it can, I think, probably hold us back. It also is like, okay, is there room to stay curious and see where these relationships take place? But I can understand that as from watching my own daughters. I was the only girl in my family, so I never had a sister, and so my friendships were very important to me, and I have a couple of friends in particular that are like sisters to me, that became that sister that I didn't have. I jokingly say this, but my son-in-law, my oldest daughter, when she got married in 2019, Tim had to meet the sisters, and the sisters didn't have to, but kind of had to give their stamp of approval because I don't think he fully understood at the time. He certainly does now, that when he was marrying her, he was getting them too. And they all at various times came and lived with them, stayed with them. They're a very integral part of the decisions they make about their lives and how they're included and part of that. And they've built whole plans around this. And so I've seen that interaction and the importance that support it provides them. So I get what you're saying, what your husband's saying, Rosa Maria, and I also get that feeling because I think they all have various ways that they show up in the world, their personalities, introverted, extroverted, all that kind of thing. But these sister roles are like, I have what I need here. I know what I need. But also, as I've gone through different seasons, I know the importance of learning and listening to other women's stories that maybe I thought I wouldn't have a connection with, and what that's taught me about myself and how that helps me know how to show up and support them as a woman in the broader spectrum. So I think it's an interesting dynamic when you have that relationship, and it's interesting observations when our partners and those that are close to us. I don't have an answer for you, but I understand the dynamic and how that can be, and the nuance of all of that. Okay. Dana, you talked about earlier, wishing you had sisters and wanting to have sisters. And and the impact that has, and just how you were the emotional toll, mental health toll, physical toll. Like you've had very, very somatic health tolls on your abuse history. And so in this new season that you're in, the healthiest, most prosperous season that you've been in, has there been a space now for you to connect with women in friendships and relationships in the ways that you always hope to? This is more of a curiosity question.
No, I think it's valid. And I appreciate you asking that. Actually, my husband and I were talking about that just in the last 24 hours, because it was always very hard to me to be, like I said, as a young child, I was actually referred to as a mistake and an accident. And that really, when you internalize that as a child and you understand at least the idea of what that means, and you see how you're treated differently, you just have this sense that you don't belong and that you're just generally not going to be accepted. So of course I did the people pleasing, the whole thing. I wanted people's approval, but I was also very desperate and clingy. So if I did find somebody who gave me a little attention and liked me, whether it was in grade school or high school, even, it's kind of like when you're dating and you come on too strongly, it sort of repels them, and they're like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. And so then you feel rejected, and then you go back down that rabbit hole to thinking, oh, see, nobody likes me, so I'm just not going to try. I'm just going to be alone, and it's lonely here and it's sad here. And like I said, my parents did have children with their respective spouses. So my sister is 19 years younger than me. But imagine I'm in college when she's born. And so we're different generations. We can't relate. And I certainly tried, even though I'm the one that wanted to have a big sister, I wanted to be the best big sister I could to her. But because geographically we lived in different places, our parents had no dealings with each other. We didn't interact on holidays or special occasions, and just the age difference. I was enduring, a very volatile marriage the first time around, and trying to raise my own son, who was a toddler, and trying to have conversations with my little sister to have some connection with her, and I'll never forget, trigger warning, being on the phone with her when she was 10 years old, telling me about a little boy in her class that she had a crush on, and she thought he liked her too. And I heard a plate I'm getting chills now. My ex-husband had thrown a plate against the wall, and it shattered everywhere. And I'm on the phone with her, not wanting her to hear what kind of a life I'm living. I'm grabbing my 2-year-old son, getting out of the room, grabbing the dog, getting the dog out of the way of harm. And my heart is racing, and I'm trying not to cry, and I'm trying not to sound panicked on the phone, but I had to rush off. And so she kind of grew up, like when she got older, obviously, and we could talk about it, she felt that I was sort of detached from her, that I wasn't interested in her life. She didn't understand, nor did I want her to know that I was just having my own experiences over here that I was trying to shield her from. So there was a hindrance there in our relationship. But I love that now as adults, we have reconnected. And I think we need that sister relationship, or even the friendships that are like sisterhoods, because we need somebody to accept us no matter what. I didn't get that from my parents. I didn't get that from a lot of family. So I love that my sister and I, even though politically we think differently, religiously we're somewhat similar, we have different ideas, different generational ideas about roles and expectations. But at the end of the day, we have respect for each other, and we're there for each other. And I think that's what it's about, whether there's biology and it's your actual sister, or if it's a friend. I have a friend that I've had 30 years, and she's been the one person, no matter what I've said, what I've done, what I've been through, she has stood by me. She is the person to tell me, you weren't your best there. Wish you wouldn't have said that. You're better than that. Kind of calling me out on things, or alerting me when I need to improve something about myself or maybe think about something a little more, but also there for every win and every achievement without that jealousy or envy or any of that bullshit, that gets in the
Yeah.
way of women because they can get catty and nasty. It's like she gives me space, as does my sister, to just be like, yay, you, good for you, but it's not a threat to them. And it's just so amazing when you can have those relationships with no matter who they're with. But I think it's more special when it is actually your biological sister. It just adds that little extra oomph. Because like I said, I think it's just a matter for me, at least, of being to feel like I belong and to know that I'm accepted. Because until I could feel that from other people, I had a hard time accepting myself. And so it has helped me heal a lot of my wounds and helped me come to terms with who I am. To have that person, I always say they're kind of like crutches. When you can't stand on your own 2 feet and believe in yourself, you have those people that kind of hold you up until you can walk on your own. And that's what I feel like these sisters or friend/sisters are in our lives.
I love that. Such great examples there, both of those. Because I talk about, I've got a couple of what I call ride or dies. Like I can call them on any given day, and no matter where I'm at, no matter how long it's been since we talked, and say XYZ, and I know they're going to show up for me. Like I know it. I've got years and years of history to support that. And I know that to this day. And I think, having those connections with those people that are just going to love you unapologetically, love you unconditionally, and also hold your feet to the fire, but you don't get defensive about it because they know you. They have your best interest in mind. And it's so important because we've gotten so many. I know Fanny will talk about this too, and Dana, you hinted to it. There's so many scripts out there as we grow up and get out in the world, and even you start seeing it in these cliques in junior highs and even elementary school, with girls competing against each other and being pitted against each other, and this crap that we really need to dismantle and be like, no, we need to be for each other. You're feeding the societal narrative when you allow yourself to be pulled down that road. And we've all been pulled down it, but being able to pull back and say, no, we don't have to operate that way. There's a healthier way for us to operate that's going to be healthier and more beneficial for all of us when we don't buy into that divisive crap, and that we actually come in together, we're stronger. And that's how we create spaces and stand up to these old tired narratives that we need to retire about being each other's threat and competition. Fanny, go ahead and share more about your why behind this curiosity, and if there's anything Dana said that brought stuff up for you as well.
I love that topic. Thank you, Dana, for this share. It's interesting because I have a big sister, but because she has some specificities, I ended up being the big sister of us three, or at least that's how I felt. And it's also interesting to notice how, for the same situation, people feel it differently. Like she feels she's the big sister, and I'm like, no, I'm the one. I'm sorry. And that's also okay, like learning about that, making peace with that as well, grieving the fact that I didn't have the big sister that would just show the path, and that I needed to like roll up my sleeves and do it my way. And also noticing that sometimes things can be more open. Like even if I didn't have a big sister, I have amazing friends who tried things before me. I connected with amazing women who just showed me there were a different way to do that. It's also really interesting, I think, the connection with people from other cultures, even if we're navigating the same Western culture in this panel, just having conversations with people from the US, for example, especially because France has always like what we call a late train regarding many topics and things like that. It's also interesting to see how, and it can open our eyes, and how in other cultures the building of the community and the importance of the community, something that we may seem to have forgotten, is something that we need to that we need to evolve as a society. But what I think is really important is something about the sister wound, what you shared, Melissa, about girls competing with each other and how we're basically trained to believe that someone's attention or society's attention or any resources are limited. And sometimes there are, because there are not that many spaces in that sports team or whatever. But because society works like that, we tend to internalize that we need to compete about each other. We need to be sorry. We need to compete with each other. We need to be the best. We need to surpass, because that's the definition of success that was being sold. That to succeed, you need to basically step on others. That in how we're told that all of our of other women are rivals, and how we're supposed to fight and compete for a man's attention or for a promotion or for, and there's some truth in that. I don't know how it works in the US, but like we still have a 10 to 15% of difference in salaries between men and women, which is awful. So there is this change that we need to do. And at the same time, it's so important to just, when we go into communities like that, we heal and just start to reprogram our beliefs. Just as we mentioned earlier, just starting conversation with other women, and then together we feel and together we heal. Suddenly, when you start those conversation, you change things about yourself, and then you interact differently with others. It just takes a sentence in someone's conversation to start a new rabbit hole, or to start a new way of seeing the world, or just basically showing you the tree that you have in your eyes. Like when you're so sure you're evolving, until boom, I didn't see this one. And what usually happens is that, at least from my perspective, it usually happens with someone, especially another woman, who has walked that path before. And that's totally random and like just a personal experience. But when I think about this, I'm like, one of the most impactful moments of my life, impactful moments of that comes from communities and conversations with women, and also conversations with myself as well. Just when you work with yourself, you recreate that connection to the part of you that longs for that community, the part of you that knows that all of this is bullshit, and that this competition and this fighting for resources, for attention, for basically the right to live, because we're so deep into the people pleasing and following the rules and following the scheme and following what has been done, what has ever been done, and how it's been. It's so important that we find the balance between our self evolution and sharing that and taking care of the collective. Because when you have, I don't know how it works for you, but when you have started the journey, there's no way coming back. Like, personally, sexist jokes don't make me laugh. Like, I'm like, no, it's not funny. Like, I'm not gonna laugh. Sorry. This is just like perpetuating some oppressive system. And I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm exiting this, and I'm choosing to do something else. And sometimes it's hard, especially because when you want to build a business, or when you want to write a book, or when you anything that involves putting yourself out there in the world, especially because we've been trained to see the world as unsafe. Sorry, see the world as unsafe because of rape culture, because of patriarchy, which is true. The world is not that a safe space, and at the same time, it's the safest that it's ever been if you look at the numbers of things, like objectively. So, where was I going with that? I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
But yeah, I mean, I think. But no, I think you bring up some good points. It's like we've got to be willing to get rid of that scarcity mindset and hold the nuance and balance that there's, something that I catch myself doing, and I beat this drum daily, and I'm still dismantling the voices in my head that I've been hearing ever since I could remember hearing anything, is when another woman succeeds, that's not like, oh no, that's like, great. It's opened the door for more conversation. It's open. She's going to reach people that I'm not going to reach. I'm going to reach people she's not going to reach. Together, we might collectively, I mean, two of the three of you here on this panel have been with me many times because we know the power of our voices coming together. And now we've added another woman to it. Rosa Maria coming into this conversation today just enhances the conversation. It doesn't take away from it. It doesn't subtract from it. It adds to it. It creates more nuance. It creates more space. She's going to bring something to it that the other three of us couldn't bring. So that's just an example of the getting rid of the scarcity mindset, realizing there's room. We can be the healthiest, most successful version of ourselves, and also deciding what success means to us. Does success mean knocking other people down to get there? Or does success mean showing up as my healthiest, authentic self every day in the ways and areas that align with my values and what I believe in, with whole, healthy relationships, in spaces that I feel safe, seen, known, and heard in, where I can also create income to support my family. I mean, and that sounds kind of Pollyanna-ish, but also it is possible if we're willing to do it together. We don't have to knock out a rung on the ladder and hold other women back for that one spot at the table, because one of us showing up at that one spot at the table is not going to change the narrative for women's safety in the workspace, for women's growth in the workspace, for the wage gap in the workspace. It's us coming together as a collective, bringing our unique voices, because they're all different. They're all unique. We all bring our own flavor to this recipe that's necessary and needed. And it's us coming together as a collective. And the old systems don't want that, because they know when we do that, that their power dynamic shifts. And it's like, we're not looking at we just want our piece and our voices to be seen, known, and heard. And get rid of this competition. Let's bring balance, bring wholeness, bring all of our voices, and know that they're all valued and important. So I think that was a whole lot of what me synopsisizing. Is that a word? Synopsisizing? Synopsis? Anyway, I need more coffee. It's Monday. Of what you were talking about, Fanny.
Sorry. So I loved what you just shared. I love how passionate you are about all of that. I think I got my train of thoughts back, but what came up for me when you were sharing all of this so passionately about having our voices heard, and I have always a part of me that is like, but there's no place for everybody to be heard. And then I noticed that this is not the right question. Maybe it's about being seen, being heard, or maybe it's just about feeling the possibility that we can, and that we do not have to fight to get it. More than
Yeah.
being heard, because I am not for everybody. You're not for everybody. Your content is not for everybody. Dana's history and memoir, Rosa Maria's history and memoirs, they're not for everybody. So it's allowing us to take some space, which is challenging, and also we are getting better at it, and also just honoring and creating a new collective way of thinking that is just welcoming, and that doesn't create the separation between there is something she shares and that has an impact on me. I mean, people have their own lives. They're like, I remember, like, I read some marketing stuff not so long ago that you need to say something 4 to 5 times for people to actually remember that it exists. And so that just reminds me how much this work is important, and how much we need to create this space, this opportunity to just know that we can take our space. That this is something that is available, that is accessible, but that also needs work. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yes. That was a really great breakdown of that. Thank you so much. It's that just knowing the possibility that when we decide to, when it's our time, when we're ready to, when we find that space and niche that feels authentic to us, that there's possibility there, there's safety there, there's welcoming there, there's support there. We don't have to just fight and claw all the time to create that space for ourselves there, that there's somebody there waiting to invite us in and welcome us, or we become that person in that space, but knowing it's possible. I love the possibility piece. So good. All right. Rosa Maria, you've heard a lot here. So talk to me more about this conversation and it's important to you, and then anything that you've heard that you want to comment on.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, the idea of sisterhood is really important to me because it is a bond that I live with my sister. She's an older sister. And, she lives in the United States. I live in Germany. So, we don't physically see each other, but we talk to each other every day. I mean, she's the person that, like, if I'm bored in the car and I'm driving home from work, we could not just say something, but we keep each other company, So, I mean, so that's the kind of relationship that we have. And I mean, besides the boring moments that we fill each other's time with, there's also, I mean, am I doing the right thing with my child? I'm nervous about this decision at work, and she'll be somebody that I can bounce all of those things off of. So that's super important to me. But I also noticed that, like, this idea of having other girlfriend relationships is kind of hard for me. Because I found that, like, as I get older and in my 40s now, and mid 40s, it's difficult to make friends and it's difficult to have these kinds of relationships. I mean, it used to be easier. I mean, in my 30s, everybody was a friend. In my 20s, everyone was friends. But now it's harder. So I find that to be really challenging. And I mean, being that I live overseas, it would be great to have girlfriends that I could share things with. Besides, and I don't have much of that because I struggle with that. It's just sometimes I feel like nobody's looking for friends. But, then I was like listening to a podcast and they're like, you know what? Everybody's looking for friends. We're all looking for different relationships. It's just that we're not verbalizing that. We're not sharing that information with other people. So that was one of the one point that I wanted to share, that it's difficult to make friends as you get into your 40s, and probably maybe harder as you get into your 50s. But one of the things that I've heard, I mean, I completely agree with this sort of support system that women really need. And you get that from a sister. And I think, like, you can get that from a girlfriend, but it has to, like, it's something that it needs to flourish. It doesn't come right away. You have to invest the time and energy in these relationships. And if you're not willing to do that, then, there isn't that, it doesn't come. I imagine that relationship, Dana, that you have with that friend that you've had for 30 years. I mean, you've invested a lot of time, energy in that relationship, correct? I mean, but it is probably easy to maintain after 30 years. But at the beginning, it probably wasn't, right? I imagine that. So those are some of the points that were really interesting to me in the conversation we've had so far.
Yeah. I've lived all over the country. I haven't lived all over the world like Rosa Maria has, but I've lived all over the country. We've moved 12 times. And over, I know, we'll be married 32 years at the end of next week. And yeah, we've moved 12 times. You did not hear that incorrectly. And so, and I'm also pretty extroverted, but I will tell you that as I've gotten older, I'm 55 now. And each time we move, there's a part of me that's like, oh, God, I got to go find my people again. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just, you got to put myself, I mean, and I'm an extrovert. But it's just like, geez, Louise, I got to go sift through and figure out who's mine, who's, all that. At the same time, I have learned, as I think about each of our moves, the first people I think of each of the spaces we lived are the women that I connected with and the memories that I have with them. Or in some spaces, there was one space where I had two teenagers that we had moved. There was a lot going on with them. That was a time in a season where I really poured into them. I didn't have the same relationships with women. It was a time that I needed to show up in relationships with my daughters and support them in a way that they needed through that time. And so my memories there, it's the one place it's like, oh, I didn't have as many people in, because I didn't join the same kind of communities that I did in the other places where I connected with women. Because one of the things I've been very intentional about in our moves is joining communities, not only for my work, but that I also know women that I'm going to make connections with and find my people with are going to inhabit. Because I live in a space where my husband has a very public facing job, and he has climbed the ladder to a point that you have to be kind of mindful of the fact that sometimes people just want to know you for the sake of name dropping and saying that they know you because of these different connections. And I am pretty quick at figuring out who those people are. But I'm also a little mindful about that and about who I give my space and time to, and assessing if they're one of those people or if there's somebody who simply wants to be connected to me. And so I'm also very mindful when I go into spaces of how I introduce myself and what goes out first when I do that, so that when people are connecting with me, I can sense whether it's an authentic connection and interest in me or whether it's just an opportunity grab. And that just exists in the world. That's just human nature. But I'm mindful. So here in Fresno, I have joined the Fresno County Women's Chamber of Commerce. I have made intentional connections with women that have become my friends. It's also important to remember, especially as we get older and we're trying to make connections, that it's not about numbers, it's about quality. And not everybody's going to be for you, and you're not going to be for everybody. And that doesn't mean make anybody bad. That doesn't mean we need to talk badly about each other. It just means we're not for each other. So we can be polite and respectful and go our different directions. So I think that's even something we can do better as women, as a collective, in supporting each other. We don't need to be everybody's best friend, but we still need to be kind and respectful in that process. We don't need to be catty and gossipy and backbiting. That just undermines all of this. And so finding those people that are your people and connecting with them, this work has helped me in a lot of ways as I've traveled these different spaces in the world, because now I connect with women all over the world. And there are women that I've made really authentic connections with that aren't just people that are counterparts in this work, they're friends. And so that was an unexpected outcome of this work. I thought I was like, I'm going to share people's voices. I'm going to get women's voices out there. And it's like, man, it's this network of women that I've created that we've become each other's support and cheerleaders. That, gosh, what an incredible impact that has had on my life. So also that the relationships can look a lot of different ways. And because of technology, we can connect in ways that we couldn't before. So knowing that there's a lot of different unique ways to find those connections in those spaces and relationships, but it does take some intentionality, and it does take, but also that realization of not trying to force something, me just showing up. And that's where I talk so much in this work about when I work with women one-on-one. When you're on the podcast with me, the layers question comes towards the end. When I work with you in what I'm speaking or my online course or one-on-one, we start with the layers piece. And we start there because in order for us to be really welcoming and open and healthy in relationships, that starts with our relationship with ourselves. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's not my point, because we do go through bumps and bruises. Dana referred, sometimes you got to have that person that's going to be there to pick you up when life gets bumpy. That's a real thing. The layers piece, though, is those pieces and parts of our story that we need to do some healing work around. We need to remove the shame from. We need to not have them, have this fog over how we feel about us and whether we're worth being in relationship with or not. And so it's healing those parts of us to know that however I am, whoever I am, is beautiful and good and valuable. And Fanny always wraps up any conversation she has with, you are valuable, you are worthy, you are loved just because of who you are. not because of what you do, not because of your title or your role or how much money you have or where you were born or your face space or who your parents are. None of that, or your spouse is, because you are you. And so when we can do that with ourselves, it's contagious. We want to share it with other women. We want other women to know that that's possible for them too. Dana is very passionate about this. She has gone down this road in this journey. She's very passionate about women knowing that. She's very it oozes from your pores. I mean, you really, really care about this because you know, and that was kind of a gross analogy. I could probably come up with something better than that. Anyway, but it's something that's very authentic that I can feel from you. I've never met you one-on-one, but I can feel it from you. Anytime I have an interaction with you, anytime I see a post. Rosa Maria, I'm still getting to know you, but in our time together, when we met, I could tell this, that you care about these things. You care about women. You care about us being healthy and well and sharing our stories and knowing each other and supporting each other through these things. And so and Fanny referred to this earlier, we have this natural desire. We are built for community. We are built to be in connection with each other. Dana talking about this yearning that she had to have that sisterly relationship. We are built for those things. And so leaning into that and seeing that as a superpower rather than the narrative that's been out there for women for thousands of years that we are to be fighting each other for that one space at the table. So, Dana, any thoughts that brings up for you?
A million thoughts, and I made notes, but I guess the one thing that has not been said that I want to point out is, yes, it's a basic human need to want the connection. And Fanny, you hit the nail on the head with the rivalry. I mean, this thing with women that we have to compete against each other is just baffling to me. But the one thing I want to point out is that we have to remember two things. One, to remember that we are all at different phases of our life. We are all going through different things in our life. So, the person I was when I was on the phone with my little sister when she was 10 years old and I was in that abusive marriage, I'm not that version of myself anymore. I can call my sister now, and now she has a 2-year-old that she's chasing around. So she might have to hang up on me. So, it's remembering that we're not all coming from the same background. We're not all in the same exact place in life. And even if we are the same age and in a similar situation, it's not because of our history and our perspective. So if we have respect for each other and take the judgment out of the situation, because I just, when you said that, Fanny, the rivalry just hit the nail on the head for me, because, it was always, oh, well, she was in a pageant in high school. She thinks she's too good. No, actually, I didn't ask to be in it. I was nominated. And I'm sorry that I felt like I had to be sorry. I was like feeling the shame that other girls were putting on me and their mothers. And then it was, oh, I wrote a book, and look at her. And like you mentioned, I did a pinup shoot this past weekend and I had a blast with it. And, there's judgment there. Oh, look at her. She thinks her body well, yeah, I work out every day. And yes, I'm 49, but I'm at the point in my life where I used to hide that and say, oh, well, I don't want to make anyone feel like, I don't want to appear conceited or make it. You know what? I work hard. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of lighting and makeup it took, but I was very excited, and I'm going to be proud, and I'm going to be excited to share that. And if you don't want to share that with me and share in my excitement, that's fine. But the other piece of this is giving ourselves permission to outgrow relationships, because I recently had to disconnect from somebody who actually called me a sister. We're not related. We connected very deeply on our history of having abusive marriages and abusive childhoods. And I was not healed. I was nowhere near. We grew very close. but I didn't want to live my life in the past. I wanted to live now, and I wanted to get past the past, so to speak. And so I've done the work. I'm still doing the work. I will do the work every day for the rest of my life. She has chosen not to, but every time I don't want to say it like in a bad way, but it just, I felt more separation. Like it was like feeling like, I always liken everything to grade school. You know, when you were at the swimming pool in grade school and they'd play the game, like somebody would like hold you underwater by your feet or hold your, and it was awful. And you're fighting to get to the top. That's how I felt in every interaction with her. They don't do that in France, Fanny. I'm sorry. That, thank God, I guess, because they're awful here, these children in the US. You know what I'm talking about, Melissa. But it's that feeling of being held down, not being able to grow and rise because somebody else wants to hold me back to some older version of me. And I think that's when we have to realize that, no, you know what? I get to heal and I get to rise, and I respect your decision not to. And I love you and I wish you well. And I will always care for you. But I can't continue to submerge myself in that mucky stuff. It's not where I choose to be. I choose to be in a different space and surround myself with different people who want better for me and who challenge me to rise to what I want to be. So I think we have to remember, it's cliche, but people are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think we have to give ourselves permission sometimes to let go and to understand, but it all comes down to respect. We're not in competition. Nobody's a threat. We're just all trying to make it through. So why can't we just help each other out?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I want to add to that. So good. I'm so glad you brought that up. Also, too, when you're feeling a some kind of way about something another woman does, it brings up something icky in you, angsty, irritated. Get curious about that feeling rather than pointing what you're feeling towards that person. Because most likely, in my experience, that has nothing to do with that person directly as much as it has to do with something about that brings up something for you that needs maybe some curiosity or some healing. Because what I've noticed in my own work, I'm speaking for myself, when I do get curious and heal that, moving forward, what I see from them all of a sudden doesn't have the same impact on me because I've gotten to the root of what was actually bringing that up for me, and not, and that doesn't mean we agree or like or whatever, however they're presenting. Like, not everybody's for us, but just because not everybody's for us doesn't mean we need to be nasty about it. We can still, like Dana said, be kind and respectful. Even when a relationship or a season comes to an end, we can still be kind and respectful and moving forward. Stay curious, stay, engaging and still finding ways to support each other as the broader spectrum. So thank you for all of that. So good. Rosa Maria, I want to come back to you. When you were talking about, you'll call your sister if you guys are driving home from work just to to fill time and show up for each other. I get that so wholeheartedly. I used to do that. Like before I had kids, especially when we were traveling around, I would just get on the phone with friends in some of our first couple of moves where I was young and we were trying to figure it out. And we would just be on the phone with each other for like 3 hours. And my husband's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "We're just there for each other." My daughters to this day will be like, if they are having a Saturday where they live different parts of the country and they're just redecorating their space, or they're watching the same thing, but they want to do it together. My middle one and youngest one will do this especially. They'll get on a FaceTime with each other and they'll just stay on together for 3 or 4 hours. They'll go through and give each other feedback on the decoration. They'll watch something together at the same time, whatever. And my husband's like, "What are they doing?" I'm like, "They're just hanging out. They're having a virtual hangout. Literally, they're just hanging out." So I wholeheartedly relate to that. And so, but I think that, yes, I understand, it's good to, like, how can I find ways to connect with people locally and all that too. But also there's such a power and support and comfort of that love and acceptance that, regardless of what's happening in the world, exists there.
It's true. And I have that. So I think that having that is fantastic, because there is this point person that I can always go to. And it's similar to like your daughters. It'll be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm cleaning. And you have your earbuds in and your phone is attached to you and you're cleaning your house, and she's accompanying you. And then like abruptly she can say, I have to go, and you're not offended because it's your sister. So that's the easy part, because there is no offense taken, or you don't take it personally or anything along those lines. So that's the fantastic part. But the other part is though that you also need more, and as a like it'd be nice to have more. Because there are so many, there's so many other people though. I mean, it feels so like closed off to just be like, okay, it's just her. And it's not because she's not great. It's just that there's so many other people that could join the quote unquote circle per se. So that's the hard part. But I do like what Dana said about the idea of choice. And I think that that's really important, because it's nice to be able to choose. It doesn't mean that you're rude or that you're unkind in your choosing, but it's nice to be able to have a choice that as a grown adult, like, what you're looking for also in friendship, and like for me, I know that it can't be like high maintenance, because I have 2 young kids that I have to take care of, and I have a husband, I have a house and a job, and busy like everybody else is. So if this is somebody that I have to like, I can't be on the phone with and like clean, then, then it's going to be difficult per se. So I love the idea of choice is really important, in terms of like, and even personality wise and fitting in. So all of those things are really important, but it's just, it also requires like personally for you to like also dig deep. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Like you said, when you joined all these groups, but it's like when I first moved to Germany, I was like, oh God, like I have to be nice to people. Like I have to smile a lot, because like I have to smile and be nice. Not that I'm not nice, but you want to, usually you put up your best face, right, at the beginning. And then it's like, oh, she's a complainer, or, oh, she's always, busy with her kids or whatever. So the stuff always comes out. But at the beginning, it's like, wow, I have to do this. I have to put in the effort. But I do see that, like, if you do that, there are like, it's worth it. It's worth the effort. It's worth the effort to make the time, like, to find the space, because it's not only helpful for me, but I think that we all have something that we can like learn from or like give back to somebody. So it's this reciprocal back and forth relationship that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm glad you said that, because I think too, when you're looking at relationships, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, when you're looking at your relationships in your life, that's part of your self-care. So what are you giving your time to? And also in the relationships in your life, it's important that you're not looking to that relationship to provide your happiness. Like we have to learn about ourselves to know that we are responsible for our own happiness, not the other relationships in our life that are responsible. So making sure when you're being mindful about these relationships, you're tending to you're being a good friend to you. You're being a good sister to you. And then that helps you to then, when you can be in touch with that and mindful of how you're treating you, it really brings a different awareness to how when you connect with other people as well. I think that's so good. Okay. All right. We're going to get ready to wrap up here. Gosh, an hour just flies by. Wow. Okay. Fanny, let's start with you. Any last thoughts, and then share with people where they can find you. But any last thoughts for our listeners, and I'll have each of you do that. Last thoughts for our listeners and where people can find you and follow you. And then also, this will be in our show notes today. And then also Dana and Fanny, their information is in our resources page on our website. Rosa Maria's will be there once she's a guest on the podcast, but everybody's will be in the show notes today. I also want to give a shout out to our friend Rashonda Blackman. She's got 2 podcasts. They're both great, but the one that she couldn't join us today. The time just didn't work for her. But she's got the Girlfriend's Girlfriend podcast. And that is just the ultimate podcast title for today's topic. So I'm going to have a link to the Girlfriend's Girlfriend. She does a great job with that. She's one of those people that you meet right away, and she just has this way about her that makes her feel safe and trusted. But she also has found that she's had to learn how to set boundaries around that and find the people that also feel safe and trusting to her, because she's such a natural magnet for that. So balancing that so you can show up well in your relationships. But the Girlfriend's Girlfriend, check that out. So now we'll start around. We'll start with our friend Fanny. Talk to me about last thoughts you want to leave with people today and where people can find and follow you.
What you feel is valid. And most of the time it's about you, especially when you feel something about someone else. It always says something about you, because if it doesn't, then what you said, Melissa, you can just be polite and say bye. So what you feel is valid, and there's a good chance you can find something from it.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Find you and follow you.
Yeah. So if you want to have a look at the podcast, it's called Your Sexified Life. Keep the Y at sexified because I'm French. I misspelled it. I liked it, and I kept it. And there are the resources on the website as well. If you want to join on Instagram, it's @with Dr. Fanny. It's just that I'm not consistent there. It's literally written in the bio. Sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm not. So the best way to is on the podcast, and I can't wait to see you there. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Always. You're always welcome here. All right, Dana, how about you? Last thoughts on where people can find and follow you and get all your stuff.
Wonderful. Last thoughts is just remember it's okay to be you. You can be to this, to that, but you're just right the way you are. And the people that think you're just right will align with that. And so don't go chasing anything outside of that. You're just fine. Just be you. Where you can find me, danasdiaz.com. We'll have all the links to socials. It'll have podcasts I've been on, my books, all the good stuff. So check me out there, danasdiaz.com. Thank you.
You bet. I love the don't go chasing. Yeah, so good. Thank you for that. Rosa Maria.
Okay. Everyone is looking for friends. So put yourself out there and try to develop friendships to help them prosper and grow. And you can find me, I have a website, it's rosamariamancini.com, and you can find my socials and information about me and my book on there.
Great.
Thanks so much for having me. Great today.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you all for being with us. Ladies, take good care of yourself this week. Think about these things, cherish those friendships, and cherish yourself in those friendships. It's okay to ask yourself those questions in those sisterhoods and friendships about, healthy and the difference between codependent and trauma bonds versus healthy and respectful and healthy boundaries and kindness. Those are all questions that are fair questions to ask yourself, because you are worthy of the healthiest, most authentic, reciprocal relationships, but also make time and space for them. And I know it can be tricky. I know it can be hard. I talked about different seasons in my life where it was more difficult than others, where I had to lean more into those spaces with my kids and my daughters. But also I always had those, even if I didn't have them local, I had those long time, what I call my ride or dies. Make space and time for those. And, even if it's just a little touch, like thinking about you this week, I haven't got a lot on my calendar, haven't been able to connect. Just want I was thinking about you. Those little things we can do for each other, and know that you're worth putting that time into, and get curious into. And when something comes up about something that's kind of, bothering you about another woman, get curious. What's a story behind that? And what can I learn about myself in that? But what can I learn about women that are different from me, that have a different story, that have a different background? Getting curious about that and listening, so you know how to show up, and support, whether it's in a broader context in the community, in the boardroom, at the PTA meeting, or just in your neighborhood, or just with each other. Being a good listener is every bit as, I talk a lot about being seen, known, and heard. but being a good listener so that you can, be seen, known, and heard well, for each other. So important for women as we show up for each other in these spaces. No scarcity mindset. We all have a role. We all have a place. We're all worthy of it. And there's plenty of room. And when we create space, it creates more space for others to come in to the conversation and be part of that space and create the place and space in the world that we want this to be for girls and women. Thanks so much for being with us today, this week, as we have talked about the impact of our relationships with girlfriends and sisters. Resources in the show notes. We'll see you next week. We'll be back with, I believe, next week is a come as you are. Just come as you are today, which is always open field. You never know what you're going to get. Kind of fun. All right. Thanks so much for being with us. Take good care and have a great week.